This is my third time trying this video. For whatever reason, I've been having troubles uploading it, so hopefully I can get it through. Mental illness. What is mental illness? It simply is that, isn't it? Mental illness. That's what I want to talk about really briefly. And I just want to, sort of think out loud. Why is it that mental health issues are so stigmatized and so discriminated against in relation to other illnesses? At the end of the day, an illness is an illness, whatever the case, whether it's a physical one, an emotional one, or a mental one. And so, in regards to mental illness, I think it's just that it's not a tangible illness. You can't see it with your own eyes. It's something that is, you know, ethereal, really. And I think that scares people away because you have to look beyond the surface when you're dealing with mental illness. And for one, all of us are mentally ill. For someone to say that they're not mentally ill, they're implying they're mentally perfect, and I know that's not true. So you'd only be lying to yourself if you told yourself that, right? And that's not a bad thing. At the end of the day, it's not a bad thing. People get ill, be it physically, mentally, or emotionally. People become unwell. I mean, perfection for me is constant. So if somebody, for example, myself, was mentally perfect, that would mean that my mental state would be constant. And of course, that's not true because, the whole universe changes, it expands, and so we do. And for me to say that I'm mentally constant doesn't make sense anyway, because there would be no purpose for me here if I was mentally perfect. So as a mentally imperfect person, how do I react to mental illness, be it through myself or others? Well, I can be empathetic, showing empathy, understanding that I am not perfect. So if I'm faced with somebody that is mentally imperfect, then of course I can understand them. And of course, because mental illness is not tangible, it's very, very difficult to point and to diagnose, particularly to the person who's suffering from it, I can imagine. And yeah, in terms of mental illness, I think the fact that it's not tangible, a lot of stigmas around it because people fear. And remember, fear is a symptom of ignorance. So because of that ignorance, people fear and they don't discuss it. It's not something that's it's almost like a taboo, isn't it, to discuss mental illness? But it's changing now. Things are changing because we are becoming more aware and sentient, so we can deal with things that probably wouldn't have been able to deal with before. But as we are not mentally constant, i.e., not mentally perfect, we do have different moods at different times. Sometimes we can be high, sometimes we can be low, sometimes it can be moderate, we can be indifferent, aloof. And obviously, that's due to not only our genetics, but also experiences that we face, the external world, which obviously is a reflection of the internal. So we do change moods, our mental state, as well as emotional state and physical. And of course, all of those are related to each other. They all affect each other. They do change. So it's not a bad thing, people, to be mentally unwell. And I guess when we in society talk about mental illness and somebody who's mentally unwell, we're talking about somebody who is extremely unwell. We're not saying that we are perfect and the person who is mentally ill is not. We're simply saying that somebody is extremely unwell. And we all can become extremely unwell. And so some people at certain times in life will need intervention from outside as well as inside. So it's not a bad thing at all. I like to look at things pragmatically, look at things for what they are. And in terms of illness, mental ill health, I look at it for what it is, exactly that. Someone that is unwell mentally. It's not a bad thing. Doesn't make you any less of a person or wrong. It simply is life. So once we all embrace that consciously, The fact that we all are imperfect, and at times we can, at all times actually, it's not about at times, we always are imperfect in whatever state, but we're striving to become perfect, aren't we? So once we do fully embrace that consciously in our hearts and understand that, then of course we can all help each other, and it won't be a stigma anymore. It won't be so wrong, because I think a part of mental illness and how it afflicts people now is the fact that it's stigmatized. So not only is one mentally unwell, but on top of that, they feel that they've let themselves down and let society down. There's almost like a guilt trip in it, and that's a shame. But with cultures and with values and with traditions and with progressive thought, we can all change that. So that when somebody does become unwell, can you imagine if a broken leg was stigmatized the way mental illness is stigmatized? If I got a broken leg, not only would I be in pain and frustrated by my debilitation, but also I would have a burden on me, a guilt, a monkey on my back, because somehow I feel like I'm wrong. And I guess that's what happens to people, to all of us, when we do become, you know, extremely unwell, be it depression, whatever that may be. So we need to really be sober, wipe the slate clean, and look at mental illness as it is, an illness, and deal with it accordingly, not to somehow put some sort of precedence on it and make it somehow stand out to other illnesses, because that does not help anyone on this earth at all. So let's look at things for what they are. Let's look at mental illness for what it is. We're mentally imperfect. We're all striving to be mentally perfect. And if we're faced with someone or some people who are extremely unwell, then we can do our best to support them and help them become well again. Simple.